All right, we'll get going. This looks like we're pretty darn close to a critical mass, so I'd like to call us to order. Um, First up in the agenda, which
At like 1 in the morning.
whoop,
Here you go.
hey, hey, Laurel. Um, I've called us to order if you're just joining us, and I'm just calling attention to something in the agenda. The item number two, the performance management for academic, professional, and administrative employees. Um, okay, so we will not be having anyone presenting on that one today. Our next agenda item, or I mean, that agenda item rather, was reviewed by PAC and is being provided for information only. So take a look at it, share anything with your constituents, and that's kind of why that's in the agenda. The next item, which is P&A Senate officer and University Senate elections. I'm actually going to call on Jacqueline to talk a little bit about this. We're going to be doing this during the next meeting, but she's going to be the person behind the curtain executing so many of these things. So let's talk about this a little bit.
All right. Um, I am going to put a link to the ballots. So we opened up nominations. Sorry, not the ballots, the nomination forms. And I'm going to pop these in the chat. But basically, the bylaws state that the election happens during a spring meeting for the officers. So that is the chair-elect and the subcommittee chairs or co-chairs. I think in the past we had a single chair. This current year we have co-chairs for the four subcommittees. And I'm not sure, Kit, you might have to fill me in on how that works, but I'm guessing if we have one or two, depending on if it's going to be a chair or a co-chair, how many interested people there are. But the nominations are open and we will have a live election process. So anyone who nominates will be invited to speak for 1 minute. And then we'll also take nominations from the floor during the meeting. And then all of the names will be in a ballot for everybody to vote on. And then also the University Senate election will happen during that meeting as well. We have 10 open seats, which is a little bit higher than normal. There are 23 seats total, and that includes the chair and chair-elect. So of the Senate, P&A Senate. So if we remove them, then that would be 21. And the bylaws state we should usually have about a third that we're electing each year, which would be about 7 seats. But we had one person who left the university and a couple others that it got off a little bit. But Kit, what else do I need to say about the election
Yeah.
process?
I think that covers it. I would just encourage every single person on this call to think about, serving on the university senate or serving as a subcommittee chair or co-chair or even throwing your hat into the name for chair-elect. I firmly believe that every single person on this phone call is completely qualified for any of those roles. So don't gaslight yourself into thinking, oh gosh, that's too big for me. I can't do it. I promise you that you can do it. University Senate is a really excellent opportunity to be part of that larger body and to, learn about what's going on at the university as a whole and really be part of some pretty impactful committee work or, conversations even. Our subcommittees are outstanding. If you've been on a subcommittee and you're interested in potentially chairing or co-chairing, I encourage you to reach out to the subcommittee chairs, and learn a little bit more about what their experience is like. And if you're interested in, throwing your hat in the ring for chair-elect, I know that Tony and I would both be really happy to, answer any questions that you have. Tony isn't able to be here with us today, but we coordinated everything quite well. So she's really happy to get emails or phone calls as well if people have questions about what it would be like to potentially have that role. So I really encourage you to think about it. It's a lot of fun. And one caveat that I will share, if you're considering running for University Senate, as one of those 10 roles that will be open next year, those meetings will be held largely in person. I'm not saying that to bar anyone here. If you are an extension or if you're on a system campus, there will be Zoom links for you to participate. So you're certainly not precluded if you're not in the Twin Cities. And in fact, if you're not in the Twin Cities, I almost encourage you even more to run for University Senate, because that diversity of voices from around the system is really, really critical. Yes, thank you, Jacqueline. Thanks. The 3 of the 6 University Senate meetings next year will be in person. So some will be on Zoom. I just encourage you to be mindful of that, as you consider your service on the University Senate. Yeah, Nick.
Yeah. Hi, Nick Skulon from the Morris campus. I'm one of the current University University Senate P&A senators. And anybody who's on the system campus or from the extension in person is not actually in person for people who are not in the physical location of the meeting.
Yes.
So you gather together, as a group for all of your senators. So this would also include any faculty senators from your area in one place on your campus, or admittedly, I don't know exactly how the extension does that. And then you basically are still like zooming in. So I didn't know that at first and was pretty alarmed when there was the announcement to moving to all in person. So if anybody, is unsure about that commitment, there's not actually a requirement to go to wherever the meeting physically is to be able to participate.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that firsthand experience, Nick. That is really important. Let's go ahead and I move on to the chair report. Or actually, hold on, before I jump ahead. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts about elections or anything that you'd like to clarify before you consider nominating or anything like that? Nope, no problem. All right, we'll move forward to the chair's report. I have just a couple of items. You might have noticed that our agenda went from being relatively packed to our agenda today went from being relatively packed to like not at all packed. There were a couple of reasons for that. So as part of P&A Senate leadership, Tony and I meet very regularly with Ken Horstman, who many of you know is the Vice President for Human Resources at the U. When Tony and I are meeting with Ken, we're not necessarily meeting with Ken as the Vice President for Human Resources. Ken is the President's Cabinet's liaison to the P&A Senate. And so, of course, he knows all about HR stuff. I mean, that's his job. And many of the concerns that we hear about in P&A Senate are related to OHR. So it's a really, it's a relationship that makes a lot of sense. And I'm bringing this up because during one of our last meetings with Ken, we were talking about how originally for this meeting we had scheduled a couple representatives from Peak to come and give a small presentation, but really to do more of a pretty open mic Q&A kind of situation with us. Ken and Jacqueline, since Tony isn't here, please speak up if I say anything that is incorrect. But I took a lot of notes during this meeting, so I think I'm pretty spot on. Ken was part of a smaller group. Greg Goldman, Ken, and I don't remember who the third person was, and my notes aren't clear. I can't read my own handwriting on that one. But they're meeting actually this month to discuss some potential options for deploying this next phase of peak a little bit differently. And by the time our next meeting rolls around, there will be a little bit more. I think there's going to be more of a solid plan that they'll be able to share. And so Ken had just kind of asked if you know when we were talking about peak with him, you know, he actually said that he would even love to be here for that discussion, and I believe he will be. But he you know just kind of told us that there's a little bit more that's evolving, and by the time our next meeting rolls around, there'll be a much more solid plan for what the next phase of peak looks like, and it could actually not could actually I after talking with Ken, I think Tony and I were both quite optimistic that you know that a lot of the mistakes that it really sounds like have been made are kind of being smoothed out a little bit more. So we agreed to move the peak presentation to the May meeting, and Ken and the peak team will be here to entertain every question that we have. But more to come on that one. That was just I wanted to be really transparent about why we moved that around. Beyond that, I don't really have a lot to share. I'm really optimistic about elections. I really hope that a lot of folks run. And you know, a lively election is always really helpful, and you know, people like options. So if you're thinking about it, throw your hat in the ring. I think let's go ahead and move on to the next report. Cole, are you here? Negative. I didn't see Cole either. Okay. Ethan from the Student Senate, are you here today? I did not see Ethan, so I'm gonna say no on that one. All right. Let's go ahead then and go into item 7, our subcommittee reports. Monica and Brian, please. You have the floor.
Sorry, trying to click on buttons. We met last month, and we had a great meeting with Katie Kalaji and, oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. I don't have the Senate report. 1 second, sorry about that.
And Monica and I just discovered we have an issue with Google Drive, so it's difficult to access notes at the moment.
Yeah. Jamie Elder from OHR Benefits joined us, and we had quite a laundry list of different topics to talk about. They gave an update related to bereavement leave, related to pregnancy loss, and that is working through the system to add that to the policy. We had some clarifications on vacation buyout, and the biggest topic of conversation was personal leave, paid medical leave, and ESST. So feel free to go out to the notes document for more information. And we are including a blurb in the upcoming newsletter related to some quick highlights on Minnesota, or on the paid leave and Minnesota sick and safe time, just to help with clarifications. Did I miss anything, Brian?
I think you got it all. I think the last thing is on this reclassification work group. We were able to meet together with OHR and the Workforce Reinvestment Governance Council that Molly and Natalie and Melissa Haynes are on. And it sounds like because there are a lot of people that are working on the same topic and everything right now, we are going to have to work together, which is great. And I think we decided, Molly, that WRGC is probably the primary driver in the driver's seat and everything. So we'd be supporting that effort for whatever the goals get outlined. So, yep.
Great. Thank you. Let's move on to communications with Angie and Deirdre.
Hello, everyone. We are excited to be able to share the updated infographic. So this was this is sort of one of the bigger pieces in our load, and there are several members of our team who have done amazing work on this. I'm thinking Nick Krivich, Molly Olson, a number of our people, Colleen as well, just did really fabulous work gathering data, gathering information. I know there's more people. Those are just right off the top of my head from the most recent emails, as well as tapping into colleague Kellyanne Binkowski, who's no longer on the P&A Senate, but was a critical driver of this work last year. So I did drop the link. I hope that PDF, you should be able to all see that. So we're very excited to be able to share that. Then we shared our most recent newsletter, went out at the beginning of March. And our final newsletter for the year that will include some of the information Monica and Brian referenced will be going out at the end of April as well as our final newsletter. So I have linked in the reports the link to our agenda if you want to check out who's been working on what, things like that. But we have had a good year. Just for people who are thinking about nominations and things like that, I am not running for P&A Senate again. And so I'm not going to be going up for the comms chair. So there will be at least one opening for that. So would love to answer any questions anyone has about stepping into that role if they're interested.
Deirdre, I just want to say thank you so much. This infographic, folks, is, I helped work on it last year, and it is a beautiful, representation of a lot of really hard work. The raw data that this committee gets is just a pile of stuff to sift through, and kind of figuring out how in the world to make sense out of this stuff. I cannot emphasize enough how messy the data is, and just how much thought goes into something like this infographic. And yes, it looks simple, but again, just let me tell you, it's not. It's a bear of a project, and I really want to say thank you so much to the comms committee, because this is a hard project to complete.
I think it is indicative of many of the aspects we're used to at the university, which is there's a lot of silos, different units, like even within OHR categorize things differently. And so like how things are talked about in nomenclature versus how they're categorized within PeopleSoft is just sort of beginning to scratch the surface on some of those pieces of data. So it is very indicative of what it's like to work at the university at a high level, where you are crossing into all these areas and you're like, oh, I said this and you said that, and those don't mean the same thing. So there's just a lot of great work. And so, yes, I echo what Alex said, that it is often easier to show rather than tell when it's trying to explain who we are and what we do.
Yes, again, thank you so much. This is one of those pieces. Last year when I did the Board of Regents report, I shared our previous version of this, and I'm really excited to share this with them again. The regents responded so well to this piece. They really liked having something that would help them really understand who we were. I know government relations loved this. This was an exemplar of something that they wanted to show the legislature. So again, this is outstanding. Thank you so much for your hard work. Next up, we have outreach with Chris and Aaron. And I believe it's just Aaron.
Yeah, just me. Chris is off this week. So some of this we've already gone over, which is that the elections are underway. A call for nominations went out to the units with open seats, and those nominations are due in mid-April. And then just again, I added the links in the document to the nomination forms for people who want to nominate themselves for chair-elect or subcommittee chairs or co-chairs, and then also to serve on the University Senate. We will also have at least one co-chair position open on the outreach subcommittee. So I encourage people to think about that. And if anyone has questions, reach out to either Chris or I. It's kind of a good place to start. If you're just getting started in governance, you don't have to have a lot of background knowledge to do the outreach. It's a lot of communication, and it's really a great way to get started and learn about the P&A Senate. And then just like we have started resumed sending out the welcome letters regularly to new P&A employees as well. And so January and February, new employees were contacted. So just trying to get the word out about the Senate as well as the meetings and elections. And again, if you know anyone who's interested in serving or possibly serving, but just wants to talk things out with someone, send them to our committee and Chris and I. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Aaron. One thing, that I wanted to add is, you don't necessarily have to have experience on a subcommittee to be a co-chair. So, if you're, on the comms committee now, for example, but you're really interested, in outreach, that's completely fine. Don't gaslight yourself. If you're interested in something, or you want to use this as an opportunity to expand your skills, go for it. I also want to offer big kudos to Aaron and in absentia Chris, because again, much like that infographic, getting elections ready, and it's a bear. And there are so many things that have to go into preparing these ballots and to getting the word out, and making sure that people show up, that we have quorum. Aaron and Chris have been working so hard to create such a welcome environment for all new employees, and they've done absolutely outstanding work this year as well. And again, elections are tough, so thank you, Aaron, for all of your really, really hard work on this. All right, next up, we have PD and E with Molly and Alex.
Yeah, so it's me today that I'll be giving this update. So I am pleased to share quite a lot of what we have been up to and what we will be up to. I'll start with the past. Since our last meeting, I think we've had 3 events. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3. So I'll remind folks that our events are available on the P&A Senate's website underneath our seminar series sort of header, which I just shared in the chat. So in January, we had a very successful policy pop-up on retirement plans that are available for P&A. In early March, we had the new Office of Digital Accessibility come and give a professional development webinar on navigating the road to digital accessibility, which is a topic I know we've talked about here in the Senate a number of times. And then in late March, just a week or 2 ago now, we had another event, a professional development event on giving every generation main character energy in the workplace. It was on intergenerational working relationships. That video should be available soon. We are in the midst of captioning it, and as soon as it is captioned, we will have it up on this website. I should say too, all the events that we've put on so far, I think we've done 4 this term so far. Over 400 registrants in every single one of those. This is really getting out there, and that is a testament to you all sharing these things with your constituents. We have had lively participation in each of these too. I just met with USAS, University Survey and Assessment Services or something like that yesterday, and they were stunned when I was like, oh yeah, we'll have at least 150 people live, 350 to 400 registrants. They were like, whoa, we're happy when we get in front of 15 people. So these feel like they're really useful events to be putting on. Speaking of which, and I know we were talking about ESST earlier, our next event in April is on sick time, ESST, leave, and more, a policy pop-up on that topic. And I just shared with you the link to the poster for advertising this, and the link to the registration is also in there. So start sharing that with your constituents. And then we are in the planning stages of having a May event, a professional development event with USAS on surveys. How to think about doing surveys, whether to think about doing surveys, how to use the tools available to do surveys here at the U. So stay tuned for that. We don't have a date yet. We do have speakers. There's a couple of folks from the USAS office who are going to do that one for us. And I should give a shout out here to Whitney, who suggested this topic and speaker. So it is more than half the battle to find a good topic that people are interested in and speakers who are willing to talk about it for an hour in front of everybody. So keep them coming. I know that some people have actually reached out to us to be like, I would like to give a seminar to your group. That's great too. If you know somebody who has something they really enjoy talking about, encourage them to reach out to us. We are happy to consider organizing an event around them. So that's our programming. Stay tuned. Keep throwing us ideas. Keep throwing us suggestions. We love that.
And
And
I
please-
will, thanks Alex for doing that part of it. I will kind of echo what a lot of our other co-chairs have talked about as far as the upcoming elections. I agree 100% with what Kit said about you do not need to have been in the committee to even become the co-chair. And I am an example of that. I was not on the PD&E committee before I became the co-chair. So if you're thinking about it in those terms, I love Alex's note in the chat about just like over enthusiasm for the thing will compensate for much of the lack of experience. And I also say it like in particular for our committee, if you're interested or have experience in event management, this will be very low level event management for you because it's all online and it's all mostly through emails and Zooms that you set everything up. So I encourage you to think about running. Whether or not Alex or I are running, we encourage people to run even if we are, right? Like there's no guarantee that we will become the co-chairs again if we run. So please consider running for ours or any other Senate openings as those things come about in our May meeting. I really encourage you to do that. And any one of us, co-chairs, Kit, Tony, Whitney, even anybody that is in any of these positions or has held these positions, I'm sure would be very happy to tell you about their experience. So if you have questions, if you're concerned about the time and how you fit that in your workload and things like that, like please reach out to one of us. We're going to be more than honest to let you know what that looks like.
Thank you so much, Molly and Alex. And wow, I want to just circle back. I mean, the metrics on the programming, 400 per webinar, that's outstanding. Really, really, great job on your subcommittee in speaker selection and in all of the really hard work that every single one of your committee members is doing to make these events happen. I know, again, the regions were really like interested during the Q&A portion of the last presentation that I did with them, about our programming and specifically about some of the programming titles. So, it's going to be really exciting to share some of those metrics with them. So thank you for all of your hard work. You all are all crushing it. One thing I wanted to say during my chair report, and I did forget, there'll be a more formal way of doing this, I think, but my final duty as chair will be a late spring, early summer presentation to the board. Jacqueline's nodding her head because it's May, is that right? Or
June.
June,
June.
thank you. And so some of this is still up in the air. We're still even kind of waiting for what our parameters and such are. But if there's something that you have done as part of your work with the P&A Senate this year, or if you're on university-wide subcommittees or on the University Senate, if there are some things that you're particularly proud of, please send those to me in an email. I'm trying to formulate what my report's going to be about. I believe that I'm going to continue down the path of educating the regions just about who we are and what we do, and the impact that we're making. It feels like right now that talking about our impact is really critical. So if anyone has any things that you're particularly very proud of, please go ahead and send that my way. All right, moving forward, we have no old business. Is there any new business? Okay, with no new business, I would Monica, boy, sliding in
Sorry,
right there. No, you're good.
sorry, I was trying to find stuff. I've been distracted because I noticed all of our files in the B&C subcommittee folder no longer exist, and I'm wondering where things are at, and has any Google Drive work things come up, and I'm wondering if other subcommittees are noticing the same thing for their subcommittee.
Yeah, it looks
Google
like
Drive
there's a lot of
folder.
activity in the last few days with things being moved around and out of there and stuff.
Did you
I
get
could-
any
I
notifications?
could still see
about-
mine this morning.
It's totally empty for me. There's nothing in there.
And things that I created in the B&C subcommittee folder that are now in my own personal drive.
Yeah,
And I
maybe
can't see anything else.
when we're
like
done
from
with the meeting,
Yeah,
we can
this
maybe
is
get
an issue.
a follow-up call and try to sort it out. Yeah. Would you be able to support that, Kit? Do you have any time when we're done here?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, we're going to end quite early, so I've got
Okay.
the help minute time on my calendar.
Yeah.
Alex,
But nobody else is impacted by that. It's just B&C.
I mean, it could be a so far.
You can see the folder. There's nothing in the folder.
Yeah.
The
Like
documents
like the
have not gone away. Sorry, Kit, to break in really quick. The documents have not gone away. So the university has encouraged folks to move to a shared drive. And we have folks who are no longer in our office and are in the process of moving things. So let me just first quell any anxiety that it's still there. Jacqueline is working behind the scenes just to make sure that people get proper access to those as they've been moved to the shared drive, which is a good thing, so that we don't ever have to worry about someone leaving again and not having access to files.
Yeah, that's
Can emails be sent out so that we all know? Because what I was trying to access was our subcommittee's agenda for our upcoming meeting, and putting in the links to the nomination forms so we can have a conversation about that. And things just kind of, it wasn't where I thought they would be, but
We
some
just
sort of
recognized that
communication
this
about
morning
this
as well.
would be good.
Yep, we just realized that this morning as well. So there's been no time for that. So this is a real-time response, but we will be happy to provide that.
gonna say it
Thank
sounds
you.
like this is just something in process. So okay.
Great. Alex, you're up.
So first, I'll answer a question that was posed in the chat. What's the time commitment of being the chair or on a committee? I'm assuming we mean as a committee chair, and I can answer that bit. Maybe Kit or Whitney will have to answer the bit about being chair. For me, it's has been an hour, maybe a half hour prior to each subcommittee meeting to plan the agenda. And then we support the planning committees that form ad hoc for each of the events. And that's maybe another hour, maybe two. If I volunteered to do like the closed captioning for one of our recordings, maybe that's another couple of hours. So on top of serving on a committee, it probably adds up to maybe 2 to 4 additional hours per month. I guess that would probably also include attending the PAC meetings, which is another hour and a half. So let's call it around 5, and it's often not even that much of additional time. And most of the time is not difficult, strenuous time. I find it to be pretty light and enjoyable. Hopefully that answers that question in the chat. And then I did have some semi-new business, but I don't know if we should pause and continue discussing that before I move on.
Alex, I would, to follow up on that first part, the commitment of the chair and the chair-elect, the time commitment is pretty similar. I would say, on average, we might be looking at 5 to 8 hours a week. And 8 would be, like on like the most extreme, like, there's a university Senate meeting, there's a P&A Senate meeting. And then there are 3 other small meetings that week. So on average, I would say, 5 hours a week of meetings and or effort would be pretty average for the chair and the chair-elect as well. Alex, you can go ahead with your next question or your next comment.
Okay, sure. This is more of a solicitation to know if anyone knows anything more. But so we all here on the St. Paul campus got a survey about this like I don't know, 2 months ago or something like that. But there, I guess, is a task force that was commissioned a while back to basically holistically look at the St. Paul campus and figure out, I guess, what to do with it or what direction to move with it in the future. And like even those of us here on the St. Paul campus have not heard a peep about this since it booted up. And I would just love to know if anyone knows anything else about what this task force is considering, what they're thinking about, what they've learned, what their plans are for communicating what they've learned or what they plan to do. It's just sort of bizarre that like I guess a task force got commissioned or put together to consider an entire campus, and we haven't heard much about it since then. I'm personally very invested in this, not just because I work on the St. Paul campus, but I live less than a mile from it. So it is practically in my neighborhood too. And so I would love to know what we are doing with this campus. And so if anyone knows anything, would love it to be shared.
Yeah, Colleen.
Hey, I've heard about that too. I also work on the St. Paul campus and it was kind of curious about it. And we got an email with a survey and then our college anyway, and CBS did a town hall thing, which I attended. And so I don't know that I know everything that's going on, but the dean was there and we were broke into small groups and everyone was asked to give their ideas of what the university does well and what we might maybe should focus on in the future. It was very broad. Also, it wasn't necessarily really clear how this is going to turn into. But what did I learn? I learned that there's like a 10-year plan for the university's sort of vision, and it's up, and now we need to redo that. And this was part of creating the next 10-year sort of vision, which had something to do with a healthier or healthy campus, healthy university, healthy, I don't know. And some information I got from asking questions too was that there is a possibility of things potentially have the university having to narrow down its focus, and if it had to do that, what areas would be important to focus on, which wasn't said until I asked the question. So I know a little bit. That's kind of what I know. I'm looking for the email to see if I can share a link to the town hall information. But if anybody else also has information, I would second the call for some explanation.
Deirdre.
Colleen, that sounds like the strategic planning town halls that we've been having. So, we've participated on those, but this particular St. Paul campus task force, so like, I work on the West Bank. We didn't have there was not a specific like West Bank component to our strategic planning town halls. They were, seemed like they were pretty broad. So I think Alex's question definitely sort of still stands, that there might be some more information to engage there, because it sounds like that might be separate from the strategic planning.
And I would say based on the task force members, they're all like deans and high level administrative leaders. So this is not what my experience has been is when that's the kind of task force members, they're unlikely to release any information until like the president's ready to release any information, right? So I don't know. We may be able to request the charge, or because I don't see the charge, like a full charge on this. I mean, like it says the task force will also provide recommendations regarding, but like their charge letter probably gives them very, at least a little bit more specific information about what they're supposed to be discussing. So I mean, if we're interested, we could always reach out to get that charge letter. Or Alex, you could probably reach out to your dean and ask about it. And if you don't feel comfortable going directly to your dean, like through your leadership. So yeah, I would say that I agree, like Colleen, what you were talking about is the strategic planning, as Deidre said, and which is separate from this. But they kind of came out at the same time because we started hearing about the strategic planning town halls and whatnot in November and December. For this to come out around the same time and be a separate thing is interesting.
Pauline, is your hand still up? Or is this a new hand?
No, sorry, I didn't realize I had to lower it, actually.
No problem. I put this in the chat, Alex, but I'm happy to reach out directly to the president's office. This is the first time I'm hearing anything about this, so I'd love to know more, and I can just share with everyone what I hear back. Deirdre.
I just have a question, it's not necessarily for the P&A Senate, but I stayed yesterday from the University Senate meeting into the Faculty Senate meeting, where they had what I believe was the final vote on the new liberal education curriculum, and it appeared to have failed. And so I'm very curious to know sort of what happens next, because that seems like a pretty big deal. And it's the second time that a liberal education curriculum vote has failed. And this does have a huge impact on P&A employees, at least on the Twin Cities campus. It was a Twin Cities specific curriculum, but we play significant roles in implementing curriculum changes, and then managing the fallout from a vote not passing. Is there anything more to know, or when do you anticipate we might learn more?
Lori, are you still on?
I am on. I don't know that I have anything to add. That is correct. The motion, it did not pass. So waiting to hear back from leadership on that.
Great. So stay tuned on that one too. We'll follow up. Yeah.
Yep, stay tuned.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of like
rapid eye blinks of panic. Rapid eye blinks of panic.
I feel like stay tuned is like a t-shirt that most of us who've been involved in any part of the youth senate have been wearing all year long. Any other new business? No. All right. At this point then, I would like to move that we adjourn, and I'll need a second on that.
Seconded.
Thank you. The motion passes and we are adjourned. We'll see you all in May.